Today I'm going to talk about restoration, or more specifically, Yahovah's will to restore that we see in the scriptures. This idea comes from something that I put together in a Word document back when we were meeting in the Scout Hut. I'm not sure it was ever recorded. It will have been something that I taught on at the time. A number of these Wednesday videos go back to concepts that I was exploring back then, and they're more fleshed out at this point. But Yahovah's will to restoration is something that will be particularly good news to us when we look at how the world is at the moment. Things are just a mess. People have got all sorts of crazy ideas. Yahovah wills that it will be restored, and we see that. We'll see those scriptures, particularly what Yahovah focuses on in his word is the Holy Land. He writes of what New Jerusalem will be like by the hand of the prophet Isaiah. At the moment, it's a bit of a mess. He would be appalled. This is a picture of Tel Aviv, which is known as the LGBTQ capital of the world, which is obviously against what his word says is good for the people living in the land to do. The word alludes to the fact that this will be the case and to the restoration. Romans 8:18-22 says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the esteem or the glory that is to be revealed in us. For the intense longing of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of Elohim, which happens when Yeshua returns. For the creation was subjected to futility, not from choice, but because of him who subjected it in anticipation, him who subjected it being Adam, that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage to corruption into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. For we know that all the creation groans together and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now." So scripture relates this as the present time is like a time of trouble, like the pains of childbirth, which is going to bring forth something that is new in what is referred to in the English translations as the times of restoration, or the time of restoration. Isaiah 60 details this time. It says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the esteem or glory of Yahovah has risen upon you. For look, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but Yahovah arises over you, and his esteem is seen upon you. And the nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around and see, all of them have gathered. They have come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are supported on this side. Then you shall see and be bright, and your heart shall throb and swell. For the wealth of the sea is turned to you, and the riches of nations come to you. A stream of camels cover your land, and the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheva come bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praises of Yahovah," which is quite an amazing thing, that all the peoples of the earth will know Yahovah. All the flocks of Kedar are gathered to you. The rams of Nevaioth serve you. They come up for acceptance on my altar, and I embellish my esteemed house. So the nations make offerings to Yehovah. Who are these who fly like a cloud and like doves to their windows? Because the coastlands wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, to the name of Yehovah your Elohim, and to the set apart one of Israel, because he has adorned you. So for all of the troubles that there are in the world, and for all people don't know Yehovah at the moment, this is all for the esteem or for the glory of his name, that all of this will be done. So at the moment, people don't know Yehovah's name. In the future, they will. That was Yehovah's purpose in all of this, that he would bring to himself a people who would obey him, who would serve him, and that all would know his name ultimately in the future. And the sons of foreigners shall build your walls, and that their kings serve you. For in my wrath I have stricken you, but in my delight I shall have compassion on you. So one of the ways that Yehovah brings restoration, we see in Israel, of course, that Israel were punished by Yehovah in order for this to be the end ultimately. Now the people who were punished, they died, and they won't be a part of the Israel that is to come, but their deaths served a purpose for Yehovah, in that he would bring about this end ultimately. And your gates shall be open continually, they are not shut day or night, to bring to you the wealth of the nations and their kings in procession. For the nation and the kingdom that do not serve you shall perish, and those nations shall be utterly laid waste. The esteem of Lebanon shall come to you, cypress, pine, and the box tree together, to embellish the place of my holy or set apart place, and I shall make the place of my feet esteemed or glorified. And the sons of those who afflicted you come bowing to you, and all those who despised you shall bow themselves at the soles of your feet, and they shall call you city of Yehovah, Sion of the holy or set apart one of Israel, that is Zion. Instead of you being forsaken and hated, so that no one passes through you, I shall make you an everlasting excellence, a joy of many generations. So things were bad, they were forsaken, called hated, but he says that he will bring them to be an everlasting excellence and a joy of many generations. And you shall suck the milk of the nations, and shall suckle the breast of kings, and you shall know that I, Yehovah, your Saviour and your Redeemer, am the God of Yaakov. Instead of bronze I bring gold, and instead of iron I bring silver, and bronze instead of wood, and iron instead of stones. And I shall make your officers peace, and your magistrates righteousness. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, neither wasting nor ruin within your borders, and you shall call your walls deliverance and your gates praise. No longer is the sun your light by day, nor does the moon give light to you for brightness. But Yehovah shall be to you an everlasting light, and your Elohim your comeliness. No longer does your sun go down, nor your moon withdraw itself, for Yahovah shall be your everlasting light, and the days of your mourning shall be ended. And your people, all of them righteous, shall inherit the earth forever, a branch of my planting, a work of my hands, to be adorned. The little shall become 1,000, and the small one a strong nation. I, Yahovah, shall hasten it in its time. So what he is doing is he is restoring things to a state of shalom. Shalom, we've looked at in this series of videos, is when something is complete, when it is whole, when it has integrity, when it is integrated, and it is a whole. We saw that the verb, what is being implied as the action behind shalom, is shalom, and that means to bring restoration, to restore something to somebody else. If you pay someone what you owe them, you are said to have shalamed, and that is what Yahovah is doing. He is shalaming, if you like. He will shalom the earth and bring it to restoration. When he created, everything was very good, but due to the free will of human beings, things deteriorated to the point that they are at now. But Yahovah promises restoration to the creation itself, as we saw in Romans 8. In Jeremiah 29:10-12 it says, For thus said Yahovah, when 70 years are completed at Babel, I shall visit you and establish my good word toward you, to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I am planning for you, declares Yahovah, plans of shalom and not of evil, to give you a future and an expectancy. Then you shall call on me, and shall come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you. So the captivity in Babylon was in order to bring this about. Ultimately, the plans that Yahovah has for his people are plans of shalom. He is going to shalom his people and the entire situation in the world. He will shalom it, and he will bring it to a state where it is complete, where his name is glorified upon the earth. Jeremiah 9:3 says, And they bend their tongue like a bow, falsehood and not truth prevails on the earth, for they proceed from evil to evil, and they have not known me, declares Yahovah. Regrettably, in the old covenant, people were disobedient. They broke his covenant. They went after falsehood and not after that which is solid and that which is reliable, that which is true. Only Yahovah can provide. We can walk in those ways, in ways of truth, in paths of shalom. But Yahovah is the source of those things ultimately. And as we know, Israel were disobedient to Yahovah, but these are all steps, stepping stones, if you like, on the path to that state of shalom. In Amos 5:21-25 it says, I have hated, I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your stringed instruments. And let justice roll on like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. So Yehovah says to the people, you're doing all of these religious works in pursuit of me because you think that these things are pleasing to me, but you do not do righteousness. You go after religious observances, and he says that he is not into that at all. He says, I have despised your festivals, which is something that we should bear in mind when we are doing the feast days. Are these things pleasing to Yehovah just because they are things that are mentioned in the Word? When we do them, do we do them in righteousness? Do we do them pursuing after Him and pursuing after His truth? Or do we just have them as kind of accoutrement, things that are in our life as events, things on our calendar, without the heart that Yehovah is looking for? Because as we see from this, Yehovah is not pleased with such things. He actively dislikes such things. In Lamentations 2 verse 5, it says, Yehovah has been like an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel, and he has swallowed up all his palaces. He has destroyed her strongholds, and he increases mourning and lamentation in the daughter of Yehudah. So Yehovah was not pleased with how they were. They would undoubtedly have thought of themselves as Torah keepers, but they were not wholly following Yehovah. They would have done certain things that were in the Torah. I'm sure they all wore tzitzit, for example, but they were unrighteous. And Yehovah became as an enemy to them, as he said that he would in the curses in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. He told them what would happen, and they did not believe his words, so they acted contrary to them, and the things that he said came upon them. John 10 verse 10 says, the thief does not come except to steal and to slaughter and to destroy. I have come that they might possess life, and that they might possess it beyond measure. So although Yehovah became as an enemy to them and was acting in the way that the thief that Yeshua talks about here acts towards them, his ultimate goal in it was to give them life abundantly. It wasn't just to destroy. His purpose, in fact, was not at all to destroy his people. He did because of their actions, but he is ultimately doing it to bring about restoration, and indeed he does bring restoration. In Deuteronomy 13:19-20 it says, I've called the heavens and the earth as witnesses today against you. I've set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore choose life so that you live, both you and your seed, to love Yehovah your Elohim, to obey his voice and to cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, to dwell in the land which Yehovah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to give them. So Yehovah gave them the means to have life. He told them to choose life, but they didn't. They chose death and evil. So that is what was visited on them. But as I say, all of that is to bring about events in which there is shalom. It seems that human beings are stubborn, and they need to see what it is to not have Yahovah. In order to choose Yahovah, they have to choose death and evil in order to ultimately see actually life and good is better. But he gave them the means to have that life that he came to bring to them immediately. They didn't have to choose death and evil, and yet they did. So the thief comes to destroy and to steal, but Yahovah does not. That's not his ultimate end. Through destruction, he will bring about restoration. Romans 5 verse 12 says, "For this reason, even as through one man sin did enter into the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men, because all sinned." So Yahovah knew that man would fall. He knew that sin would enter the world and death through sin. But his ultimate end in that was to bring about restoration through Yeshua. In that state, we then all need Yeshua in order to be saved or delivered from the predicament in which we find ourselves. In John 5:24 it says, "Truly I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me possesses everlasting life, and does not come into judgment, but is passed from death into life." So death had come upon all men because all sinned. But through Yeshua, we have the means to repent, turn back, believe in the one who sent Yeshua, and pass from death to life. In Hosea 14:4-9, Yahovah speaks of the restoration of Israel. He says, "I shall heal their backsliding. I shall love them spontaneously, for my displeasure has turned away from him. I shall be like the dew to Israel. He shall blossom like the lily and strike out roots like Lebanon. His branches shall spread, and his splendor shall be like an olive tree, and his fragrance like Lebanon. Those who dwell under his shadow shall return. They shall revive like grain, and blossom like the vine, and become as fragrant as the wine of Lebanon." So Yahovah divorced the house of Israel, but he promises to bring them back, and restore them so that they flourish. Verse 8 says, "What more has Ephraim to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after him. I am like a green cypress tree. Your fruit comes from me." So that was why he divorced the house of Israel, or Ephraim, because they committed adultery with idols. This implies that they will recognize that actually their fruit comes from Yahovah. People get all sorts of weird ideas about how they can make their lives better, and that it might be more desirable to sin in some way, not do what the word says in some way, like that is going to benefit them in some way. Verse 9 says, "Who is wise and understands these words, discerning and knows them? For the ways of Jehovah are straight, and the righteous walk in them, but the transgressors stumble in them." And what are we to do if we are transgressors, as all of us have been in times past? "Repent therefore, and turn back for the blotting out of your sins, in order that the times of refreshing might come from the presence of the Master, and that he sends Yeshua Messiah pre-appointed for you, whom heaven needs to receive until the times of restoration of all matters, of which Elohim spoke through the mouth of all his holy or set-apart prophets since of old." And indeed all of the prophets did speak of these things. An example is seen in Joel 2. "Do not fear, O soil, be glad and rejoice, for Jehovah has done greatly. Do not fear, you beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness shall spring forth, and the tree shall bear its fruit. The fig tree and the vine shall yield their strength. And you, children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in Jehovah your Elohim, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness, and cause the rain to come down for you, the former rain and the latter rain as before. And the threshing floors shall be filled with grain, and the vats shall overflow with new wine and oil. Then I shall repay you the years that, or shalom you, the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust and the consuming locust and the gnawing locust, my great army which I sent among you. Then you shall eat and be satisfied, and praise the name of Jehovah your Elohim, who has done with you so wondrously, and my people shall never be put to shame." So Jehovah has sent these locusts among them for his purposes. The people were disobedient, and he punished them, but he alludes to the fact that there will be this amazing time of restoration, not for the people who were immediately punished because of their wickedness, but for Israel as a whole. We see the times of restoration spoken of by Isaiah. "See, Jehovah is making the earth empty, and making it waste, and shall overturn its surface, and shall scatter abroad its inhabitants. And it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the female servant, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The earth is completely emptied and utterly plundered, for Jehovah has spoken this word. The earth shall mourn and wither, the world shall languish and wither, the haughty people of the earth shall languish. For the earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Torot," that's the plural of Torah, "changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant." You see, when we translate Torah as laws, then that would make Torot. When we translate Torah as law, that would make Torot laws. But actually what it means is teaching and instruction, or teaching and direction. So it would be, Torah would be teachings and instructions, or teachings and directions, which makes more sense. They've changed the law, they've broken the everlasting covenant, so things are not good upon the earth. But That's not how Yahovah leaves things. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth shall be burned, and few men shall be left. The new wine shall fail, the vine shall languish, all those glad at heart shall sigh. The joy of the tambourine shall cease, the noise of those who rejoice shall end, the joy of the lyre shall cease. No more do they drink wine with the song. Strong drink is bitter to those who drink it. The deserted city shall be broken down. Every house shall be shut. No one enters. There is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy shall be darkened. The gladness of the earth shall be gone. The city is left in ruins, and the gate is stricken with destruction. For thus it is to be in the midst of the earth among the peoples, like the shaking of an olive tree, like the gleaning of grapes when the grape harvest is done. They lift up their voice, they sing of the excellency of Yahovah, they shall cry aloud from the sea. Therefore praise Yahovah in the east, the name of Yahovah Elohim of Israel, in the coastlands of the sea. So these are not his people that this is talking about. This is the peoples, the nations, the Gentiles. It's interesting that it mentions the grape harvest. People think of the grape harvest as being idiomatic of the gathering of his people together. So these are the gleanings after the grape harvest is done. Those of the Gentiles who will turn and will acknowledge Yahovah. From the ends of the earth we shall hear songs, splendor to the righteous one. But I say, waste away, I waste away. Woe to me, the treacherous betray. With treachery, the treacherous betray. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall be that he who flees from the noise of the fear falls into the pit, and he who comes up from the midst of the pit is caught in the snare. For the windows from on high shall be opened, and the foundations of the earth be shaken. So there will be no escaping this. No amount of prepping will see you through this time. If Yahovah wants you to be stricken in this time, you will be. The earth shall be utterly broken, the earth shall be completely shattered, the earth shall be fiercely shaken. The earth shall stagger like a drunkard, and it shall totter like a hut, and its transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And in that day it shall be that Yahovah punishes on high the host of exalted ones, and on the earth the kings of the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and be punished after many days. And the moon shall blush, and the sun shall be ashamed, for Yahovah Sabaoth shall reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his elders in esteem. So this is the time when things are shaken, or moved, or removed, whatever English word you want to use. And after this, there will be a time where righteousness dwells on the earth, when what we saw in Isaiah 60 will come to be, when New Jerusalem will come down from heaven, and his people shall be a light to the Gentiles. 2 Peter 3 verse 13 says, according to his promise, we wait for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That doesn't mean one that is entirely new. It means that the earth and the heavens are going to be made new, like the earth was made new in the days of Noah. That the destruction that the flood brought made the earth new. Only this time it will be destruction by fire that we will see, and it will be a time of righteousness. We read of that time in Isaiah 2:2-4. It shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Jehovah is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah, and the word of Jehovah from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle any more. So this is the new heavens and the new earth in which righteousness dwells. And it says that he shall judge between the nations, and we see that happening at the sheep and goats judgment. A lot of people think that that is a judgment of his people, but it specifically tells us in Matthew 25 that that is a judgment of the nations, or all the nations are gathered before him. And he shall reprove many peoples, and they're going to pursue peace rather than war. We see a microcosm of the kind of the larger fractal of this theme of restoration in the life of Joseph. His brothers were planning to kill him. They decide that that's not wise, that they're going to sell him to the Ishmaeli, and ultimately they throw him into the pit, and they sell him into slavery in Egypt. In Genesis 39 it says, his master, who is Potiphar, who bought him, saw Jehovah was with him, and that Jehovah made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Yosef found favor in his eyes and served him, and he appointed him over his house, and gave into his hand all that he had. And it came to be from the time that he appointed him over his house and all that he had, that Jehovah blessed the Mitzrayins and the Mitzrites, the Egyptians' house, for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Jehovah was on all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. So he trusted Joseph. And Joseph was handsome in form and handsome in appearance. And after these events it came to be that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has given into my hand all that he has. No one is greater in this house than I, and he has not withheld whatever from me but you, because you are his wife. And how shall I do this great evil and sin against my Elohim? And it came to be, as she spoke to Yosef day by day, that he did not listen to her, to lie with her, to be with her. And it came to be on a certain day that Yosef went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand, and fled and ran outside. And it came to be, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house, and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it came to be, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me, and fled and went outside. And she kept his garment with her until his master Potiphar came home. And she spoke to him the same words, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it came to be, as I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So Yehovah was with Yosef. Yosef would have known that Yehovah was with him if the Egyptian knew that he was with him. But now we see Yosef falsely accused. He's been cast into a pit, sold into slavery, and now he's falsely accused, and he's thrown into prison where he is for 13 years. Imagine what this must be like to be Yosef. And we can speculate about why Yehovah would do such a thing. Yosef obviously spoke evil of his brothers, and now he is being spoken evil of. So we could speculate that that was Yehovah's reasoning. Other people would say, well, Yehovah did it in order to make him as a king over Egypt. We can speculate as to the reason. The scriptures don't actually tell us the reason, but what we do see is that Yosef is restored. It says, the word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh when Yosef says that he should appoint a wise man, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Yosef, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, you yourself, and at your mouth all my people shall kiss. Only in the throne am I greater than you. So Yosef is taken into slavery. He's put over Potiphar's house. Then you might think, well, I've been favored by Yehovah. But then he's falsely accused and put in prison for 13 years. And then he is put over all of Egypt. So we see Yosef, and that's ultimately where he is when he dies. He's an important man. He's been restored. So we see that Yehovah Shalom's Yosef ultimately. I bring Yosef up as an example here because we can see with Israel that it was clearly their sin which then caused them to be in dire straits and then ultimately be restored. With Yosef, we can speculate that maybe it was things that he did wrong that necessitated that. If we look at the verb shalom again, we can see that this is what Yehovah is doing in the life of Yosef, what he does in the lives of Israel, and what he does ultimately in the life of Job. Job is someone else who was a righteous man who was afflicted by Hasatan in order for it to draw something negative out of him. In John 8:1-3 it says, passing by he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, they should be born blind? Yeshua answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of Elohim might be made manifest in him. So this man was restored also, but there was no sin in him. In the life of Joseph, you could argue that there was something that Yehovah was working out. You could speculate that that was the case. In the life of Job, certainly he cursed Elohim, as Hasatan accused him that he would. And certainly in the lives of Israel, you can see that they were disobedient, that they went astray, and that Yehovah will bring to himself a people who will obey him to be his people. So in all those examples, we can see that the cause of it was sin, and Yehovah will ultimately bring about restoration. In the life of this man, there was no sin. The restoration that was brought about in the life of this man was so that the works of Elohim could be manifested in him. It was for the glory of the name of Yehovah, and as we saw, that is ultimately what all restoration is for. It's to magnify, to glorify, to esteem the name of Yehovah. With Job, it says, and Yehovah turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends, and Yehovah gave Job twice as much as he had before. And this is something that you'll see with the theme of restoration too, that the restoration is to something greater than it was before. Israel were cast out of the land. When they are brought back, they will have Yeshua living and reigning among them. The state of the world at that point will be so much greater. So much more will be achieved in Israel when they have turned to righteousness. And of course we see that in the life of Joseph as well. When he is restored, when Yehovah Shalom's Yosef, brings him to a state of Shalom, he is now ruler of Egypt. Yehovah willing, I'll see you next week.